Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I was just discussing with my very good friend and co-host Christopher the benefits of what the third or fourth program that we've used to broadcast the show since its inception.
It's the third or fourth program in the last six shows.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like this is the one because this is the one that allows us to do the show with the least amount of work necessary on my end, which, as anyone who has ever collaborated with me will, I'm sure, agree, is all I'm really after. Like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. Can I do the minimal amount of work?
Yeah, the program you used where you had to manually switch from one person to the next when you're doing your Patreon hangout was a bit more work than you were willing
Yeah,
to. Plus, there's the
yeah.
fact that when you're doing that, you're concentrating more on getting the right screen up than actually participating in the discussion, which, considering that it's the opportunity for your patrons to discuss things with you, being too distracted to discuss things kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, well, I would just look, God, guys, just talk amongst yourselves, okay? I'm directing this thing. I can't talk to you people.
Daddy
Um,
has a hangover, you handle it.
yeah,
Just stay
just
quiet.
please, somebody else, please. No, we're actually we're using Zoom for this, which is the same program I've used for my last two Patreon hangouts, and it seems to work really well. It has the active speaker feature, so that it automatically cuts to the camera of the person talking, so I don't have to direct it, manually, which is nice. And so far so good.
Even for a control freak like you, that's a bit much.
Exactly. I mean, because it's like, I because if I need to, I can still select which camera to show, but for the most part, it's like we're
Oh
just
God, Christopher's face is up again. Abort, abort,
yeah,
abort.
exactly. No, back to me, back to me, back to me. Uh,
With your nice blue ghost house
Thank
lighting
you.
back there.
Exactly. Don't you love it? This, you know what this is? This is one third of my patriotic lighting because it's veterans. Actually, here I'll do half of it red. So there, look. It looks more. It doesn't really look
That
well.
you need a demon on one side and an angel on the other.
Yeah, here I'll do that, and then maybe do red on the other side. There, that looks a little more. It looks kind of pink though. I don't know. And plus, it could be like you could now. It looks kind of French. Which, hey, speaking of which, where's Pierre?
I talked to Pierre. I said we were finally doing a show, and because it's been a while since we've done one, and I see that you're fascinated and riveted by what I'm saying.
No,
So
I'm switching my lights back. Please continue.
He honestly, what he said was that honestly he thought the show was canceled. It's been
Oh,
so long since we do it. I'm like, Pierre, we're not, we didn't sign a contract. We're not on a network. This is just whatever. We'll do this as
right.
long as we're both interested and there's a venue and people interested. There's no one canceling us. But he started scheduling, blocking up his schedule because you know, personally, him saying that he blocked out his schedule and that he can't do the show is kind of laughable considering that even when he has open spots in his schedule, he still doesn't get here. But yeah, bottom
Yeah.
line is he wasn't prepared for this because it was he thought we were canceled. And honestly, I thought his excuse was going to be that it was like Monday instead of Sunday and that he had normal work to do. But no, that's what he went with.
He's a European. They don't work.
Yeah, they don't celebrate U.S. Veterans Day either,
They
although
have
Remembrance Day falls on the same day. So
they have humane work schedules over there. They don't.
and
Yeah.
people actually
So
get benefits when they
yeah,
do that.
benefits. Like who needs that? Come on. Um, I Yeah, so yes, you're right. Today is Veterans Day here in the United States, and it's Remembrance Day or Armistice Day in the rest of the world.
11/11, 11.
11/11, the end of commemorating the end of the most depressing war ever,
The
World
war
War
to end
One.
all wars,
The war
the
to
one which did not live up to its billing, unfortunately.
the war to end all wars for about 20 years,
Yeah. The
and then
war
we'll
to
have
punt,
another one.
the war to punt the war, bigger war down the
The
line.
war to punt the bigger war down the line. I like that one even better. Yeah. So yeah, it's Veterans Day here in the U.S. and it's the end of World War One everywhere else. And it used to be the end of World War One here too, but then we decided, we only really fought in World War One for the last year, so why don't we just make it like about all the veterans? And everybody in the United States said, "Okay, Like, do we get a holiday from it? And somebody was like, well, yeah, sometimes I guess if it falls on a Friday or a Monday. And they're like, awesome, let's do it.
And they also said, but in exchange for that, we're getting rid of Washington and Lincoln and just doing President's Day.
Yeah, because we have so many holidays. If you're like a poor person who has to work every day anyway, it doesn't matter to you. Like, you don't get the day off anyway.
Yeah, if I was in my last job, I would be at work right now answering phone calls from idiots.
I I never I never got Veterans Day off. And in fact, we didn't even get it off as a school day. We
Really?
always went to school on Veterans Day. Yeah, we had an
Huh.
assembly. We had a Veterans Day assembly
Well, that's
where
because your school district doesn't love America.
I know. Yeah, yeah. My Trump
They
loving school district. Actually, you're right.
they love the Confederacy.
My school district thinks it loves America, but actually, does it? Uh, yeah. So, thank you for your service. We didn't serve in the military.
God,
Uh,
no, I'm afraid not.
I don't
That
think.
not the sort of thing that I think I would have been able to handle physically or mentally.
No.
Honestly,
I went to the recruitment office, and the guy said, "Yeah, no thanks."
no, they never say that now.
No, now, yeah, this was pre 9/11 when they were a little cockier about turning people away. The guy was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then after 9/11, he actually called me and he was like, hey, what do you.
Well, after 9/11, it's like, can you white out the section where you put the thing about outstanding felonies? Just mark the box that says no.
They were taking guys straight out of
Oh,
prison onto the bus to take them to boot camp. Like, come on, we don't care. Come on. Um,
I wish I could be 100% certain that you were joking about that.
me too. Me too. I thought I was. As far as I know, I just made that up, but it's probably true. Um,
That's a heartwarming phrase. As far as I know, I just made that up.
yeah.
It's kind of a frightening level of where we stand today as a country.
I'm thinking that it's too awful to be real, but who knows?
I mean, you look at the current administration, that's too awful to be real, but here we are.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. Well, just as long let's ease into it with this, okay? Because we're going to talk about our subject today is patriotism versus nationalism, and here's what annoys me, okay? A couple weeks ago, when Trump was booed at the World Series, right? There was a Democratic senator, Chris Coons, who I mentioned in today's Facepalm 5 video. He's a Democrat, and he was interviewed on CNN after Trump was booed at the series, and he's
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I feel like the office of the president deserves more respect than that, even if you don't like the person who is occupying the office. And that to me seems like patriotism taken to the point of where you're like it renders you completely useless as a citizen, because there's this
You have to respect the office, even if the person who's in the office is not
yeah.
demonstrating a shred of that respect.
Yeah, it's like this blind appreciation or loyalty where like and people, I think people have that same attitude toward the country as a whole, where it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, sure, I can acknowledge that America has done some bad things, but let's not say anything too rude about it, or too critical, because I mean, we love our country, right? Our
Yes.
country deserves respect and love. And it's like, okay, so I guess we should just pretend that the problems don't exist because God forbid we appear disrespectful, you
Yeah.
know?
Speak no ill of the dead or the terminally ill, as the case may be. Uh,
Ah, damn. I like that.
uh,
So, you had some thoughts on this. I wanted to pose a question to you, though, as we get started with the patriotism versus nationalism subject.
all right.
Right before we went on the air, I got a comment on my Facebook post about this from my friend Dan, who suggested that patriotism and nationalism are actually the same thing. And patriotism is just a more palatable term that has been invented to refer to what is ultimately just another form of nationalism. What do you
Yeah,
think about that?
I can sort of see where that's coming from. There was a period of time where I referred to patriotism, and in my head, I sort of have a general sense of it, that it's just the absurd belief that you are inherently better because of where you were born.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's necessarily what it comes down to, because I think there is like valid patriotism, and really what if I had to boil it down to the simplest terms, the difference between patriotism and nationalism is that patriotism is that you love your country because of what it does, and nationalism, you love what your country does because your country is doing it, and the
Yeah.
moral or ethical component drops out of it.
That's
And
a really good point. Yeah.
I think that's the difference. That patriots can look at people who exemplify patriotism, can be very proud of their country, and still look at it and say there are problems here. There are places where we can improve. There are places where we can do better. This was wrong. Nationalism is, well, we're doing it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
And you reach the point where we support and accept things that we would consider monstrous if it was done by someone else, because it's nationalism. We're doing it, so it's okay. That is where I've come to believe that the divide between the two exists.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that I think there can be and should be a distinction between the two things. Like, I don't think patriotism is necessarily just another word for nationalism. I think the way the word is used, it often is.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
I think when someone like Donald Trump or his supporters talk about patriotism, what they're actually calling for is nationalism. And actually, I don't know. In the case of Trump, it might even not even be that. It might just they're calling for blind loyalty to him,
Right.
and like even something, even nationalism doesn't really enter into it, because I feel like to him it's just incidental what country he's in. Like, he uses that to enrich himself and to big himself up, and it comes
America
across.
now currently a subsidiary of Russia. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, and it comes across as nationalism, and functionally, like, that's what it is. Like, I wouldn't argue with someone if they said that Trump was a nationalist, but in his brain, I think he's number one. He's using the country, or the appeal of the country to embolden and enrich himself. But yeah, I think a lot of people, when they refer to patriotism or they want people to be patriotic, what they're actually doing is talking about nationalism. But I agree with you that I do think we can afford to have a concept of patriotism that is distinct from nationalism, and it's sort of like, it's you can draw an analogy to how you love your family, right? Like,
Al
unless.
Franken did that, and it was one of my favorite descriptions of how liberals versus conservatives of America. And I don't have it in front of me. But
Yeah.
basically, he said a liberal will love their mother like an adult, acknowledging all the good they've done while still understanding they're not perfect and there's things that that you don't necessarily have to agree with or could have done better. And then a conservative loves America like a 5-year-old, like mommy is good and anyone who says anything bad about mommy is wrong.
Right. And if loving a person as an adult also means that you recognize that it doesn't negate your love for them if you expect them to be better. Like, if your mom, for instance, does something wrong or exhibits some kind of shitty attitude or mistreats somebody, it doesn't mean you don't love your mom if you pull her aside and say, "What the hell was all that about?" Like, maybe you shouldn't say that or do that anymore. And, like, that doesn't mean you hate your mom. It means you love your mom and you recognize that she did something that troubled you and you want to encourage her to be better. Just like if you were to look at your country, say, just to pick an example at random, the United States,
Completely
and
random.
completely random example, and you were to look at the United States and say, you know what, I love this country because it's where I'm from, because it's where I've spent my life, because it's where most of the people I love live, because I have a connection to certain places because I believe in its ideals, if not the things it actually does.
Yeah.
I believe in the potential of it. But at the same time, you recognize that there are ways that it falls egregiously short, and you would like to see that taken up. Like that doesn't mean that you don't love your country. I think a lot of people who push patriotism and what they really mean is nationalism is they have no room at all for any kind of critique of the country at all. It's like you
Mm.
said, it's like it's good because the country did it. You take the goodness and the greatness of the country just by definition. That's just you stipulate that and you start with that and you can never move off of that. No matter what, the country is right, the country is good, the country is great, and we should and if we want to be good patriotic citizens, we should support it no matter what. And that's a recipe for disaster.
As we see firsthand these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, like patriotism is America, land of the free and home of the brave. Nationalism is America, love it or leave it.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And it's become so co-opted that the lines become so blurred with nationalism being conflated with patriotism as the same thing, that it gets to the point where like I see people driving, they have an American flag on their car, and I'm thinking, oh, an asshole, which
Yeah.
is completely unfair. And I admit that, but that's my visceral reaction because most of the people who go out of their way to show how patriotic they are and how much they wave the flag and they get in your face about it are generally using that to defend some really awful opinions and positions. And they're not really following a moral code. They're following this nationalist code of, what we do is okay. Unless we
Yeah.
elect a black president, that's not acceptable. That you're under attack. But anything else, kids in concentration camps or
Yeah.
offering firefighting assistance to Russia and then threatening to cut off firefighting assistance to California, things like that. Random examples again.
Totally random. Yeah.
And it's this the people who I most frequently see with the flag or displaying the flag or waving the flag around tend to be the really terrible people who are using that to try to elevate their ideas. And much like the whole thing about trying to elevate certain Christian groups trying to elevate their homophobia by equating it with their religion, it's not bringing the terrible idea up anymore, it's dragging the other thing down. And the
Yeah.
perception of people who display the American flag has dropped, not because of anything that's necessarily rational or specific to any individual, but more a matter of the people who are doing this are using it to defend some very terrible positions. And I start to assume that anyone who's displaying the flag is doing that as well. And again, I admit up front that is unfair, but it's where my brain goes now because this has been going on for so long.
For me, I try to take note of how conspicuous the flag display is, because like on it, like today's Veterans Day in this country, and a lot of people have their flags out because it's a patriotic holiday.
Yeah, you
So
put an asterisk on a day like this because
yeah,
a lot of people display flags that they don't. If the guy across the street was still living there, his pickup truck would have the American flag on one side and the Confederate flag on the other.
right, exactly. See, that's what I'm talking about. It's if you see if I just see an American flag displayed like off somebody's front porch, I don't necessarily think anything about it because lots of people fly the flag for all kinds of reasons, right? If they have like a humongous American flag like draped off their porch so it goes like from top to bottom and like that's a little suspicious. I'm like, what's that about? And yeah, if you almost anytime you see someone with a flag displayed from their vehicle, whether it's one of those little flags that you tuck into the top of the window, which you saw a lot after 9/11. I don't see them very much anymore, but after 9/11, I saw those a lot where people get the little flag and they would stick it in like their rear window of their car or their truck, and it would just be flapping in the wind. Or yeah, the people who have like full size flags on the back of their trucks waving, as they drive down the road.
So large that it's affecting their gas mileage.
Yeah, exactly. It's creating drag on the vehicle, and you're like, wow, you really want people to think that you love your country. Yeah, that makes me suspicious. That makes me think, and just like you, the first thought is, oh, they're probably an asshole. or at the very least, having a conversation with them about American history would be very frustrating. You know,
They're trying to convince people of something that their actions aren't going to demonstrate.
yeah, they're the
This is their loophole to try to demonstrate that they're a good citizen, despite the fact that their actions don't necessarily show it.
they're the kind of person that would be deeply bored by any lesson in history class that did not involve a war. You know, like where they feel like American history as a subject should just be hopping from war to war, and that should be the history, and we shouldn't talk about anything else. We shouldn't talk about the development of the government. We shouldn't talk about the evolution of our society. We certainly shouldn't talk about inequality or, you know, women's empowerment or slavery or, you know.
We should talk about the Second Amendment, but not the Three-Fifths Compromise.
Right, exactly. You know, we should.
And boy, that's a proud moment in history, the Three-Fifths Compromise, isn't it?
It's
one of the great
is.
Foundations of our country.
Whenever you, whenever you open like a modern replica of the Constitution, and you see like a whole section that has been crossed out because it was so bad, we had to get rid of it. Because like 20 years later, people were like, oh, like, I don't know about that part. You know, we're going to have to get rid of that.
Yeah. It's like, that's the midichlorian section of the Constitution.
Yeah, technically it's canon, but we're not going to talk about it. Okay. Like, you don't have to worry about it. Yes, it happened. Yes, it's real. You don't have to worry about it.
Is the doctor half human on his mother's side? We don't talk about that.
Yeah, I mean,
we're sneaking our geek references in early.
Fuck it, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, and you know, you get the flag everywhere. I mean, I don't think I've gotten forever stamps in like the last 5 years that aren't American flag forever stamps.
Yeah, they're all flags. Yeah, they're all flags. I mean, I guess unless you specifically ask for a different one.
Right.
If you're like, can I have like the All in the Family one?
You go in and like, do you have anything that's not flags or religious?
Yeah. Oh, Mickey Mouse, really? That's it? That's all? I don't want Mickey Mouse stamps.
But yeah, it's just and you know it becomes absurd that it's not only to an extent that it's become a requirement. Like pretty much any politician's campaign logo, campaign bus, anything is going to be covered with red, white, and blue and stars and stripes. You can't go with anything else, because if you do, you're not patriotic enough, or you don't love America enough, or all that nonsense about the flag lapel and who's wearing it and who's not. It's like, come on, that may be even more absurd than the whole war on Christmas thing that we're going to have to start hearing about in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah,
it's a non-issue.
There's something so just blatantly performative about it. And the worst part is that it works. Like when the flag lapel pin deal, which I think was Obama, right? Obama didn't wear a flag lapel pin once, and everybody was like, he hates America. And
well, any excuse will do.
Well, that's true. For Obama, any excuse will do. And then after that, like Obama and everybody else, like every politician, every candidate, everybody always wears a flag lapel pin no matter what. Right? Like, you know.
Except Trump. He missed one at least a couple times.
Except Trump. Trump doesn't even know the goddamn words to the national anthem. So, you know.
Yeah. Imagine if Obama had done that. That's been one of the things I've been doing on Facebook periodically. Imagine if Obama did that.
I submit to you, not only does Trump not know the words to the Star Spangled Banner, he wouldn't even recognize the tune if you played it for him and didn't tell him what it was. If you went into the Oval Office and said, Mr. President, name that tune, and you started humming the Star Spangled Banner, he would be completely at a loss. I don't think he would get it. And for Republicans now, like, that's not a problem because it's their guy.
It's another form of nationalism or tribalism. It's what the Republicans do is okay. That's patriotism. Yeah. What anyone else does is an attack.
Just like when the United States does it, it's good. When somebody else does it, it's bad.
Yeah.
Like, the Russia interfering in our elections is bad, which I think we all agree with. But a lot of us think us interfering in other people's elections is completely fine. Like, but no, it's not okay when we shouldn't do it either.
I'm sure that
Like,
we have nothing to do with what's going on in Bolivia.
not at all. What do you no, of course not. We would never
And
do that.
and with our press, a lot of people who are watching, probably all four of them, are like, Bolivia?
Yeah,
Stuff going on in
right.
Bolivia?
Did something happen in Bolivia? Exactly. It hasn't. I mean, it's been reported, obviously, but it hasn't been treated as a very major story. And that's another that's we're going a little bit off topic, but it's our show and we can talk about whatever the fuck we want. If Pierre has a problem with it, he can come on and say something about it. But no, like the media in general, the mainstream news media is is so woefully not up to its task that it's a little scary because I mean American news media always neglects international news no matter how important it is, and that's nothing new. But they neglect domestic news too. Like a couple days ago, the president of the United States was ordered to pay a $2 million fine because he was found to have engaged in charities fraud.
Specifically taking money for, was it children with cancer?
Yeah,
Or was
taking
that veterans? It was children with cancer, right?
he,
It was,
he'll,
it was one of them.
he'll
And
I mean
could have been both.
he'll fuck either group to put $5 in his pocket, so it doesn't really make a difference. But I mean, yeah, he used they had fundraising events that were supposedly to benefit the Trump Foundation, which in and of itself you should know that should be a red alert right there. Like, oh, what's the charity? The Trump Foundation seems legit, but it was
He's
and
going to try, he's going to the university
yeah, exactly. It's an endowment for the university,
where they
and
serve the steaks in the cafeteria.
see, exactly, and the school uniform you have to wear one of those fucking Chinese ties, and
Is the MAGA hat mandatory too?
probably, sure, why not? Yeah, but yeah, they held fundraisers supposedly for the Trump Foundation with people thinking that the money they were donating was going to be given to charity, and it went to his presidential campaign, and that he was ordered to pay $2 million to a variety of legitimate charitable organizations, to pay for this, and it was barely even a story. Like it was
What if
just
Obama had done that? Would that have been a story, do you
oh
think?
my God. If Obama would have been impeached just for that. And by the way, if he had really done it, he should have been. Because that's fucking horrible. It's a crime, and
And we don't give a free pass just because the Democrat did it.
that's the thing is like because people try to flip it back on you and try to say, well, what if Obama had done? But if Obama had done any of the things that Trump has done, yes, he should have been impeached. Like
But that's where the nationalism comes in. That it's like, because our guy is doing it, it's okay no matter what it is, no matter how clearly unethical or illegal or immoral it is. It's okay because we're the ones doing it.
yeah, and see they go through this process of denial, and then when the denial becomes impossible, it becomes, well, it doesn't matter because it's okay.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, exactly. He did well. Trump didn't do that. Oh, okay. Well, if he did do it, I'm sure he had a really good reason. Okay, well, maybe blah blah. And eventually, you get to, yeah, he did it, and it's fine. Like, there's no like that's where we're at with the Ukraine thing, where now they're
Right.
like for months it was, oh, there was no quid pro quo, and Trump is still trying to claim that. He's like the only person still saying there was no quid pro quo.
Even though he and Giuliani basically both admitted it on television.
Yes. Yes. And well, and Julie and everybody else has moved beyond that, and they're basically saying, yeah, so what? They're either saying, yeah, there was a quid pro quo, but it doesn't matter because they got the money, or yeah, it's a quid pro quo, but it's okay because, well, he's the president and he wanted to investigate corruption. So okay, so we're trusting Trump's stated motives. I'm sure that's a reasonable thing to do.
The investigating corruption by committing it all yourself. See what
Yeah.
it's like.
I mean, so yeah, it ultimately comes down to it's okay when we do it. Like they try to make excuses as long as they can, and they try to deny it as long as they can. And when that is no longer an option for most of them, it comes down to, well, it's okay. It's okay when we do it. You know, yeah, he did it, but it wasn't wrong. And that's the way it always is. There are still people who would say that about Richard Nixon, who would say, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, he did what he was accused of, but what was so wrong with it? And what
And,
Nixon did was not even a fraction of as wrong as what Trump has done. I mean,
but once you get there, you go to the point where, again, ethics and morality don't enter into the equation anymore. Once you get into that level of nationalism, is it possible? Like the definition I gave at the beginning, you think that's a decent definition of the difference between the two?
I would say so. I would accept it. Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to be a patriot and a nationalist at the same time? Then,
I mean, in general, I would say no. I mean, I would say like there may be like if you're judging a person, you
mm-hmm.
might be able to say that, well, at times they behave as a nationalist and at times they behave as a patriot. But like I would feel like in general, I think they would have to be mutually exclusive, because like patriotism as you defined it earlier would seem to preclude nationalism, because nationalism is reflexive, nationalism is unthinking, patriotism is, I have the best interest of my country at heart. Like I want good for my country and the people that live here, but I'm not going to just automatically approve everything that happens, you know,
Right?
because under that definition, that wouldn't be patriotic. Like the kind of patriotism that you describe, that we're talking about as being separate from nationalism, it almost requires you to be thinking and to be critical and to evaluate what things that happen that are related to your country on a moral basis. Like you
Mm-hmm.
you love your country, but you want your country to do right. So you can't just automatically assume that your country is doing right, whatever it does.
Like I said, but when I floated this topic, that I have given this a lot of thought, and I'm
Yeah.
not 100% clear on it myself. I haven't reached a lot of strong conclusions beyond that initial definition. So, I'm asking because I literally don't know either.
Yeah.
Um, I suppose that the best overlap is if your country actually isn't doing anything wrong, which, let's be honest, never happens.
I was gonna say, well, yeah, it'll be.
You never,
It sure would be
you know,
nice if we were able to enter that phase of American history at some point.
yeah, but that we're a long way off from that.
Well, but the other, that's another thing though, is like that shouldn't be the expectation, because you're right. That hasn't happened, and that's probably never going to happen, because we are a country of 300 million people, and we have, even if you take the United States as a single entity, the interests of the United States are vast and complex and contradictory. So even if
Yes,
we're,
the Northeast and the Southeast have never pulled in the same direction in
yeah,
250 years.
yeah, exactly. And like even if we're trying consciously as hard as we can to do the right thing, we're always going to be screwing someone over without meaning it, you know? And that's not an excuse, but you can I don't think the standard can be well, we have to do everything right. The standard should be, we should be sincerely trying our best to do right, and we should be trying to minimize the harm we cause. And when harm has been caused that we didn't realize we were causing or didn't intend, we should be willing to try and make that right, instead of just waving it off and saying, hey, come on, you know, can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Like we shouldn't be like that about it. We should be trying to do the right thing, as individuals and as a country, you know. But I don't think we've ever been in that place. Like there have always been elements in the United States and in the United States government that have pursued what they felt was good for the United States, and it didn't matter at whose expense it came. That's
Even if
why.
it was a, oh, an extent, at that point, we have people who aren't even going that far. It's not doing what's right for the United States. It's doing what's good for me in this position. Well,
Oh,
how can I
sure.
benefit myself in this position? Because there's a lot of things going on that nobody in America, beyond the people who are actually casting the votes or refusing to let people cast votes, not thinking of anyone in particular, Mr. McConnell, is, there's a lot of people who aren't working in anyone's interests except their own.
Yeah, and they might put up a veneer of doing it for the country or doing it for the good of the people or whatever. But yeah, they're not actually serving anyone's interest other than their own, which is something that like for instance in American foreign policy, like that's usually the case, and very often that's not even really hidden. Like people on all across the political spectrum in the United States are fairly frank about, well, we should be doing what's best for our country, and that's it. And if we can do it in a way that doesn't destroy someone else's country, yeah, that's fine.
Unless it's too expensive,
Unless
then
it's
we'll
too
just destroy.
Well, it's like I mean, on the one hand, it's kind of gratifying, like to see it finally just stated out in the open by someone in public office, as opposed to like one of my dipshit relatives saying it at a family dinner. But I'm sure you've probably heard this before too, whether it's a relative or a friend or a coworker or somebody. Like almost always, whenever some kind of conflict, like in the Middle East, comes up, what we ought to do is go over there and just take the fucking oil. And that's what Trump is saying. The president of the United States is coming out and saying we're going to take their oil. Or don't worry, everybody, we've secured the oil. As though everybody other than like the only people who give a fuck about the oil who don't live in those countries are people like Trump and racist right-wing people who think that somehow we're entitled to it and we should just go over and we should take the natural resources of other countries.
Well, that's what we've been doing for centuries.
Yeah, well, that's colonialism.
That's nothing new.
That's colonialism. But to hear the president of the United States just come out and proudly say, "Hey, we're going to take their oil," not even like as a euphemism, not even we're going to establish a strategic partnership. No, we're going to take their oil, and his base of supporters will cheer that like they just heard a John F. Kennedy speech. Yeah, we're going to take their oil. Like, I cannot imagine people being that sincerely invested in whether or not we take oil from some other country. But because they've convinced themselves that this is like a smart way to pursue foreign policy, and they've heard and like they've heard people say it, they'll cheer for it. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and what I find is that things like that, patriotism and trying to find ways that you can do better. Is that Kennedy? That's not what your country can do for you. That's what you do for your country. How can you make your country better?
Yeah.
That patriotism is constructive. Nationalism is just inertia. It tends to be very destructive.
Yeah, and it's
nationalism also involves an inability to believe that anything can possibly be better than it is right now.
Yeah, it's almost always cited as a reason to resist change or a reason to change things back to the way they were prior to
whatever improvements they didn't like.
Yeah, some recently accomplished change, or in some cases some not so recently accomplished change, because there are still people who want to get rid of income tax, even though it's been around for over 100 years. And there are still people who want to get rid of Social Security, even though it's been around for almost as long. It doesn't, they want to roll things back to the 19th century because they think that things worked better back then, even though they didn't, which is why they changed them to the way that they were later.
I can't imagine how many people genuinely would say, damn, I miss those robber barons.
Yeah, unless you're a robber baron or you have some delusional fantasy that someday you could be one, if only the government would get off your back.
Although, honestly, I think we do have robber barons. They're just either a little less obvious about it. It happens. It came about much more gradually, and people didn't realize it.
Yeah.
People are the frog in the pot of water that's slowly getting hotter.
I
That works as a global warming thing too.
That's all of us, right?
Yeah.
Except there are a bunch of us frogs who are trying to get the other frogs to get together, and maybe we can climb out of the pot and turn the heat down. And the other frogs are like, "Fuck you, it's fine."
Get down here, Greta. Start getting above your
What are
station.
you doing? Yeah. Well, and yeah, it's. I think we have like the we do have robber barons. I think today we have sort of the modern equivalent of robber barons, and I feel like even like the relatively good rich people like Bill Gates, who gets a lot of positive press for giving so much money to charity and doing all this, medical research and trying to eradicate diseases in Africa, like a lot of legitimately good work that nobody would ever fault him for. But even that guy, who has more money than anyone could possibly need, uh, complains about the prospect of taxing billionaires more at a higher rate, you know?
Well, I
And it's
understand
like,
billionaires complaining about that to some extent because they're just completely blind to how much money they actually have. What I don't understand is a person who makes $12,000 a year
yeah,
and is surviving on public assistance complaining that people are going to take money away from billionaires. It's like this is never going to harm you.
no,
You are never going to lose money over this.
it's not going
You
to
can
harm
only
you.
benefit.
It's not going to harm you. It's not going to harm the billionaires because here's a dirty little secret. We could tax 100% of their income every year for the rest of their lives. They'd still be fine because they're billionaires. Like, it's not going to affect their quality of life at all.
Yeah,
It's
what
not
was the
going to
thing?
change their lives at all.
Yeah, there's a thing going around Facebook a couple of weeks ago that said, I feel it was like, suppose that you do work and you get paid $5,000 a day for your work, and you get paid $5,000 a day every day for your work, weekdays, weekends, holidays, every single day, and you've been collecting that $5,000 a day every day since Columbus set sail for the New World in
Yeah.
1492.
Yeah.
You would still not have $1 billion,
Yeah.
and you would not have as much money as Jeff Bezos' wealth increases in a single week.
Yeah. We're talking about so much money that it's to me there is no moral argument against it because to me your morals have to exist and operate in the real world. And while a lot of these people can cite a principle and say, well, but it's wrong to take money that isn't yours, like why would you want to take money away from a billionaire? That's his money.
No,
Okay. Well, even if you accept that, because yeah, we can get into all kinds of reasons why it's
yeah.
not actually his, and it's a lot more complicated than just, well, he earned the money, because you don't earn money like that by yourself. But let's just assume that it is his money. Okay, it's his money. He has $100 billion in his net worth that he just has, right? And he earns billions more a year. You can say, well, it's wrong to take money from him because that's his money. Okay. But that doesn't exist in a vacuum. And if I say to you, okay, we can let the billionaire keep 100% of his money, and these people over here with cancer are going to die because they can't afford cancer treatment, or we can take a tiny percentage of that billionaire's money and subsidize healthcare for those people, and some of them will survive their cancer because they'll have the necessary treatment. You're telling me you telling me it is a greater sin to take that billionaire's money than to let those people die. And I just do not see that argument. For the life
No,
of me,
but
I do not understand why that makes
but
sense.
some people will fight for that argument tooth and nail
Yeah,
for some
yeah.
reason.
I don't get it. If you told me that, and I'm never going to be a billionaire. I'm never going to be a millionaire. But if you told me that you could take an amount of money out of my paycheck every check that is small enough that I wouldn't even miss it. Like, it would be gone. You would be taking my money, but I wouldn't even know it was gone because it would be that small an amount. And because you took that small amount of money from me and from a bunch of other people who could also afford it, that other people who would otherwise die would be given a chance to live. I cannot imagine saying no to that. I cannot imagine saying no to that and being able to look myself in the mirror. It's monstrous. It's
Can you
saying,
imagine being the person who intercepts the money that's going to those kids and puts it into their campaign fund?
yeah, yes, it's like it's absolutely monstrous. I'm like, I would rather keep money that I wouldn't even miss if it was gone, just on the principle of, well, it's my money, rather than allow it to be used for some good. Like, and that's the argument. The argument is we shouldn't take an amount of money from people who have more money than they could ever possibly need, an amount of money that will not change their lifestyles in any way, will not limit their opportunities in any way, and then use that money to fund necessary services for people who don't have that kind of money, who in many cases don't have any money, who don't know where their next meal is coming from, who don't know how they're going to pay for health care, who don't know how they're going to put a roof over their head. We shouldn't take the money from the rich people to care for those poor people because, well, the money belongs to the rich people, and that's that. That is so fucked and immoral, I cannot even imagine it.
Well, that requires having a mindset in which you have compassion for other people and empathy for other people. And a lot of the proponents of these mindsets or these approaches don't have that. They don't care about other people, because the thing that a lot of the conservatives and libertarians and so on don't understand is that they're part of a society.
Yeah.
And while you're so concerned about what society owes you, the fact is you owe things back to society too. And it's part of a back and forth. And it's give and take. It's not just take and take.
Yeah.
No. You have to give to other people, and a lot of people don't understand that or don't accept that, and are in a position where they flood the airwaves of their propaganda and convince other people the same thing.
Yeah, you convince other people to vote and advocate against their own interests.
Yes,
and against the interests of people like them, because it's not just a selfish
thing. The Republican Party has been brilliant at that for decades. We're seeing the prices being paid, and some people are starting to wake up to it, but there are others who are still completely fooled by this and still wholeheartedly believe that the things that help them are what's hurting them, and will fight tooth and nail against helping themselves because they don't realize it.
Yeah, well, because they tell people things that sound true.
They tell them nationalistic things that sound good, but don't actually work in real life.
And here's the key thing that we know don't work, right?
Trickle-down economics does not work because the bin at the top just gets bigger, and then it all goes into offshore accounts. This country has plenty of wealth for everyone, but it's held by too few people.
Yeah, we have decades of history establishing this. Like, it's not just theoretical anymore. It's not like, one side says, let's try trickle-down economics, and the other side says, no, it won't work, and we just don't know. Like, we've tried it. It doesn't work. We know. We have decades of history backing this up. We know that it doesn't work. We know that it doesn't benefit the working class. We know that it doesn't benefit those in poverty. We know that it does not result in the rising tide that lifts all boats. That doesn't happen.
It's just resulting in the rising tide.
The rising tide, and people who don't have boats drown. that's
biblical.
That's the flaw. That's the flaw in that analogy. Not everybody has boats. Like, not everybody has a boat. Everybody's in the water. Not everybody has a boat. So when you raise the water, people in boats might be okay, right? People without boats are gonna die, and you get the people in the water to vote for it because you're like, well, someday you'll have a boat. It's ridiculous. But if they didn't do it, they wouldn't have a case. Like they
if you vote for me, I'll let you on the boat. That's quid pro quo.
Yeah. I'll let you on my boat. Come on.
Or at the very least, I'll keel haul you. That's better than nothing.
See, but like I saw a great. Oh man, I saw a great meme the other day. Cause the wildfires in California recently were threatening the Reagan Library. Oh, heaven forbid. Heaven
On
forbid.
both sides.
Yeah, and somebody said, "Well, just tell the firefighters to just keep fighting the fires, further north, and hopefully some of that water will trickle down."
Yeah, I saw that. That was great.
And I thought, yeah, because that's how it works, right? Oh
Oh,
God, I hope it burns down. I mean, like that's I was just it, I think I've said this before on videos a couple of times. Like my dad is by most measures is very conservative, uh, but he was not a fan of Ronald Reagan because he recognized that Ronald Reagan was not a friend of working class people. And it's rare to have a Republican admit that and acknowledge that
yes.
because Reagan has been so deified
Hmm.
and held up as like the modern day Abraham
Yeah.
Lincoln.
Yeah. Ronald Christ Reagan.
Yeah, and the truth is, yeah, he was a horrible president for working class people.
He was actually, he put most of the things, he laid the groundwork for the dismantling of America that we're seeing now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. He destroyed the economy. He made it more difficult to pursue reforms and changes that would be necessary in the future to maintain a healthy society economically because manufacturing was sort of going away because there were going to be fewer manufacturing jobs because of automation and things like that because the nature of the economy, the nature of the United States in general was changing. And instead of acknowledging that and rolling with it and saying, okay, we need to start making some things for the future, he continued to behave as though we were going to be a country of factories and coal mines forever. And what
He began
happened?
the,
The
he
factories went out
began
of
the,
business and the coal mines closed and nobody had a fucking job.
he began the vilification. Well, I suppose it's always happened, but he really elevated the vilification of the poor and the working poor and the people who need public benefits in order to survive. He
Yeah.
made up the fictional welfare queen
Oh,
and just attacked it, and then took all sorts of steps that made more and more people poor and need those benefits, even as he vilified the people who needed them.
and how did and to bring this back around to our topic, how did he keep the working class voters in the Republican Party from turning on him? He fed them feel good nationalism. He told them that America was a shining city on a hill, and he pumped them full of absolutely meaningless optimism about this fuzzy idea that we're such a great country. And that's what people say about Reagan. Even people who don't agree with Reagan's politics today, when they look back on his presidency in one of those like bullshit CNN documentaries or something, they say, "Oh, he made people feel good to be an American again." Yeah, while he was gutting the country. He made people feel good to be an American again, while the rates of homelessness skyrocketed. He made people feel good to be an American again,
Yeah,
while
you can
while
inject,
yeah,
you can do a execution where you inject a chemical cocktail that makes them feel euphoric as they die.
yeah,
They're still dead.
they feel good. Like
Yeah,
you make people feel good for absolutely no reason. You're not doing them a favor, and it doesn't make you a good president. Like you could say, like, well, he made people feel good. Yeah, great. He made people feel good. While a bunch of their fellow Americans died of AIDS and he did nothing to help them, right? But they felt
no,
good,
AIDS. In fact,
you
AIDS was
know?
a great big laugh to the Reagan White House.
Oh, yeah. They didn't care at all. I mean,
There was open mockery of reporters who asked about it.
yeah, 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 absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, so but that's how Reagan kept people. That's still why people think that he was a great president, because he told them this story that they wanted to hear about how great the United States was.
And then Bush and Bush's son actually sort of carried that momentum for their careers as well.
Yeah.
In
Well,
fact, when the election was Obama's first election, I guess was against Romney was the second one.
yeah.
I'm just blanking.
McCain was 2008.
McCain, thank you. I blanked on McCain. That election, Obama versus McCain. At that point, I was like over 30 years old. and I realized this is the first presidential election in my lifetime where the Republican ticket does not have a Bush or a Dole on it.
Yeah. That's
There was
right.
like 7 or 8 or 9 straight elections that his Dole was the vice presidential candidate. Then you had Bush won as vice presidential twice,
Yeah.
presidential twice,
Yeah.
and then Clinton, then Bush. Dole was the
Clinton Dole in
Dole,
96.
yeah, and then he had Bush
Yeah.
twice. So that was like 8 straight elections where there was a Bush or a Dole on the ticket.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's been the Republican Party for a very long time has been a very insular society.
Well, yeah,
It tells
there's
people what they want to hear without letting anyone else in.
yeah, yeah. You know, I just want to say I cannot believe you blanked on John McCain on Veterans Day. That is, you know, if you were more patriotic, I don't think you would have done that.
Touche.
It's a shame, you know. This is the this is the future liberals want. Open mockery of our great war heroes on Veterans Day of all days.
Was I openly mocking McCain? I didn't even remember
I'm
who he
gonna say
was.
you were. I'm gonna say you were.
I wasn't patriotic enough.
You were. No, a true patriot would always remember John McCain's name and would never bring up the various ways in which he was a shit, and would always talk about him as though he were a blameless, you know, just beacon of guts and morality, and you know, yeah.
I just wanted to see how far you would go with that.
Yeah.
But that would be the nationalistic approach, right?
That
So
would be
we're
the
saying-
nationalistic approach. Well, yeah, and unless you're a Trumper, in which case you hate John McCain because he didn't like Donald Trump.
But if you're a Trumper, you really aren't demonstrating much in the way of critical thinking skills. So
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So can I ask a question here?
Yeah. Please.
With what we've gone over today, do we still have to do 5 minutes of Trump?
Well, you don't have to. I mean, I did.
Because
I do have the graphic, but we don't have to. You know.
Yeah. Although I gotta say, it's sweet that there's at least some sort of motion toward impeachment, even if the Democrats had to be dragged kicking and screaming toward it.
Yeah. Really.
I mean, considering some of them don't even like the thought of people booing the president, or actually trying to remove him from office, because we can't remove him from office. We respect the office too much.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, I feel the same way. I'm very glad that the impeachment inquiry is happening and is moving forward. I think it sends a message. I mean, even though it's still extremely unlikely that he'll actually be removed because the Senate
Democrats,
isn't.
we get there eventually.
Yeah, the Senate isn't going to convict him. I would be surprised if any Republicans cross party lines to vote to convict in the Senate. But it sends a message, and hopefully the Democrats will campaign on it and will say, "Hey, we were the party that tried to get rid of him."
And you know what? Try to get that vote in so that when the Republicans stand with Trump, you see in the election, here was the evidence against Trump, and this candidate, the Republican was like, no, that's fine.
Exactly, which is what a lot of candidates did during the recent elections, and it worked for the most part.
Right.
I mean, unless except in areas of the country where there's just no fucking hope, where it's just like where it's so
Alabama,
Alabama, Mississippi, where it's so red that it's like, don't even bother. They don't fucking care. But yeah, like the Kentucky governor's race, where that guy ran as pro-Trump as you possibly can. And not only did it probably not help him, it cost him, because the race was either tied or showed him with a slight lead going into the election, and he lost. And the Democrats, on the other hand, we didn't have elections in my district this time, but I got a lot of the political ads on TV from the Virginia delegate elections and such. And all of the Democrat candidates I saw were running very, very hard anti-Trump and running against Republicans who were very pro-Trump, and they were hitting them on their loyalty for Trump, and it seems like that worked.
Yeah, well, you'd think that'd be a no-brainer, but
yeah, you would think.
You'd think.
But yeah, I hope that's what happens. I hope that the Democrats will vote to impeach, and then we'll take that and say, hey, Here's all the evidence. We thought it was overwhelming. The only reason he hung on was because the Republicans don't care, and they just voted to save their guy. But we tried to get rid of. We made the case for why he's dangerous and needs to go, and we tried to get rid of him.
Democrats could campaign on the concept of law and order.
Yeah. But in reality, not just as an excuse to persecute black people.
Right.
Like actual rule of law where like, oh, the president is a criminal, we should get rid of him. You know. Yeah. No, I think we've done enough to cover 5 minutes of Trump, I think.
Okay. All right, we're good. Do we have anything for Who's Garbage Now?
I have one.
Oh, all right. So we got the graphic.
I have one. Yeah, I got the graphic. Okay.
But I can't see the graphic, so I can't do the voiceover part.
So I'll trust. I'll do it.
Okay.
And we'll just do that. Yeah.
So. I believe in
you. Okay. Who's garbage now? I didn't do it as good as you do it.
Well, it comes with experience. I've done it like 4 times. You've done it 1.
That's true. I do practice it, but I just can't quite get it right.
Yeah, sure you do.
I practice it in the mirror. It's every night, last thing before bed. I'm in the bathroom. I close the door, lock it. My wife has no idea what I'm doing. And I'm just staring at myself in the mirror going, who's garbage now? Who's garbage now? Who's garbage now? You're garbage now. No. She walked in on me one time and she was like, are you okay? Because I'm just saying to myself, who's garbage now? Who's garbage now? She's like, what did you do? Just tell me what you did.
That'd be inspiring. That bumper sticker, Trump 2020, who's garbage now?
Who's garbage now? Okay, so my who's garbage now, and I wasn't going to do this, but you reminded me of it. I just thought I might as well mention it here because I've complained about it a couple of other places already too, and fuck it, I don't care. Who's garbage now?
Instant reruns.
Yay! Yay! Who's garbage now for me is professional wrestler Chris Jericho.
Ah, yes, I remember hearing about this.
You've heard about this.
From you.
Yes,
From you.
You were fancy that. Yeah, so for people who don't know, so Chris Jericho is a wrestler who's been around for a long time.
Not Chris Benoit.
Not Chris Benoit, who is dead. No, Chris Jericho. Although they're both Canadian, so you know.
I have no idea what that means.
And they wrestled each other quite a few times and had great matches. But anyway, so Chris Jericho is a wrestler. He's currently with All Elite Wrestling. He's the All Elite Wrestling World Champion. Just over the weekend, just had a really great match with Cody Rhodes. But the reason I'm saying he's garbage now, despite being a fan of his for many years, is he also hosts a podcast. And his guest on his podcast last week, I believe, was Donald Trump Jr., who incredibly is somehow the least impressive person with the name Donald Trump. Like I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you can be named Donald Trump and you're somehow less impressive than that other Donald Trump. It's impressive in its own way. But he wrote a book.
Donald Trump Sr. has disavowed any knowledge of Donald Trump Jr. Never met him.
Donald Trump Jr., I think I took a picture with him once. I take pictures with a lot of people. And it's probably true. I mean, do you get the impression that he's that close with his kids? I don't. But yeah, so Donald Trump Jr. wrote a book that I just saw.
I mean, he probably has his name on a book that someone else wrote. Yeah, let's be honest.
He has taken author's credit for a book. Actually, I saw someone photoshopped fake book jackets for it, and instead of the actual title, they changed the title to "Daddy, Please Love Me."
Yeah, didn't they actually replace replace it on some books in some bookstores?
Yeah, I think they put the fake book jackets on the actual books on like a bookstore display. It was beautiful. But yeah, the actual title of the book is Triggered, which, as I say in today's Facepalm 5 video, is, I think, indicative of the kind of original thinker that Donald Trump Jr. is, because you never hear that joke. Nobody on the right is making triggered jokes, right? So he wrote
Except about gun violence.
Oh, too soon.
It always is.
It's always too soon, because there always was just a shooting. Yeah, so he wrote this book called Triggered, and he's going around on his book tour, and it's really depressing because, like, there are people inviting him on their fucking shows, and it's like, how, like, Do we not know what?
And to actually treat him like a human being, not to
Yeah.
tee off on him.
Exactly. Like, how can you still not get what game is being played here? Like, I do not understand it. But anyway, so Chris Jericho had Donald Trump Jr. on his show, on his podcast, and
We're talking about Donald Trump Jr. You want to set the background to red? Would that be fitting?
oh, look at that! Look at that! You are just full of good ideas. There we go. Okay, so Donald Trump Jr. Ugh, makes me so mad. He goes on Chris Jericho's podcast to shill his book, and he has such a great time that like he tweets a picture of the two of them together where they're like standing next to each other and smiling. Oh, what a great fun time I had with Donald Trump Jr. And a lot of Chris Jericho's followers on Twitter were replying to say like, what the hell? You know? And when you lose wrestling fans, like I'm just saying, if you're like a famous and really, really awesome pro wrestler who has been around for 30 years and wrestling fans are coming up to you going, nah, man, that's not cool. Like, you must have really done something bad. Because wrestling fans don't give a shit. So people were saying, hey, Chris, not cool, you know? And they were explaining why. They weren't just saying like, oh, you guys, you suck. Like they were saying like, you know, when you have someone like Donald Trump Jr. on your show and you have like a friendly interview where you just talk to him about like, what was it like growing up with your dad? Or, you know, tell me about the book. You just this bullshit like softball interview as though they're a fucking legitimate person. You're
like, hi, I'm Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah, exactly. You're normalizing them. You're sending the message that they're an okay person and that maybe we just have a couple disagreements, not that they're a criminal and a fascist and a bigot and someone who should not be treated with respect anywhere for any reason. And Jericho responded by retweeting somebody who complained about it and saying, calm down, I'm nonpartisan.
No, that doesn't work. There's certain things where you can't be in the middle. It's like if you're dealing with the Klan and you got people on one side, you know, the Klan saying black people aren't even human, and you got the other side saying what the hell. There's not a middle ground on that.
No,
you're either taking the side of decency or you're not. There's no I'm nonpartisan. There's one side or the other.
Yeah, and if you invite the racist guy onto your show, and the interview consists of you going, so tell me why you think we should send them back to Africa, and then them just, you know, like giving their reasons, and then you change the subject to, so you play baseball in high school, right? And like, yeah, like you're treating it like it's just a normal topic of conversation.
Like Bill Maher did when he had Milo on.
Yeah, it's like you can't.
And Larry Wilmore had to do his job for him.
Exactly. You can't. It's like it would be like, and the excuse of, well, you know, I had him on my show, but I'm nonpartisan, or, you know, well, we didn't even talk about politics or whatever. Like, you at this point you can't invite Bill Cosby on your show, and then when people complain, say, oh, come on, we didn't even talk about the rapes. Like, you can't, that's no longer an option. You can't bring that person on your show and just have a fun talk and pretend that they aren't who they are, and then expect people to be cool with it because, hey, come on, we didn't even talk about the bad stuff. Like,
you can't ask Mr. Burns, your campaign has the momentum of a runaway freight train. Why are you so popular? And pretend that you're being even-handed.
Yeah, you just, you know, oh, come on, I had a nice conversation with Hitler. He's a fun guy. We didn't even talk about the Jew thing.
We talked about art. What's wrong with art? You don't like art?
He loves dogs. I bet you didn't even know that. Like, it doesn't. It's not.
Oh God.
You can't. You can't. It's like I thought of that that episode of The Office when Michael Scott is in debt and Oscar says you might have to declare bankruptcy, and he's thinking about it, and then like he steps out of his office and he speaks in a booming voice to everybody else in the office, and he says, "I declare bankruptcy." And then, like, after the commercial, Oscar comes in and he's like, you know, I just wanted to let you know that you can't just declare it like that. You know, like, that doesn't do anything. That doesn't do anything.
There's a legal process.
And that's the same way with like Chris Jericho saying, I'm nonpartisan. Well, you can't just say it and expect it to be true. because it's not true. You might think it's true in your head, like you might sincerely think, well, I'm not on Donald Trump Jr.'s side. I disagree with him about all kinds of stuff. But your actions say differently. Your actions say you view this person as a legitimate person. And when someone said, hey, Donald Trump Jr.'s people called and he wants to be on the show to talk about his book, instead of saying, as you should say, tell him to go fuck himself and I hope he dies, you said, oh, sure, bring him on. I'd love to have a talk with him. And then when he was on your show, it wasn't just you screaming obscenities at him until he left, which is really the only way that could go that would satisfy me. If the whole show was just Chris Jericho going, you motherfucker, you piece of fucking, what the fuck is wrong with you, you motherfucking piece of garbage, until he finally gave up and left, that would be fine.
I did ask you, if he body slams Donald Trump Jr. into the desk, will all be forgiven?
Yeah, if it's a shoot body slam. If it's like, I mean, if he really hurts him. Like, if Chris Jericho did something to Donald Trump Jr. that really fucking hurt him bad, then yeah, all would be forgiven. But that's not what happened.
That's not what happened, no. I don't really have anything for the Who's Garbage. I do have something, but I don't think it really necessarily fits into the concept of the segment.
Well, we can expand it.
Yeah, I mean, we did create it. It is our thing, you know.
But we did create it, like it's Frankenstein's monster. We created it.
But before I go on to that, are your lights? Were they steady or were they flickering, or was like the camera's adjusting the changes in the light?
I think it was the camera adjusing because the lights were changed. The lights were the same. Yeah, I can set them. I can set them to cycle through different colors, but that really drives the camera crazy.
Because it was flickering red and pink and orange a little bit. Yeah. You can watch the replay a little bit. But
I think that was the white balance. I think the white balance when the camera doesn't quite know what to do sometimes when there are color lights in the background.
And with the shadows in the background, some of it's white and some of it's cut. Yeah, okay.
Well, it's probably better that you called attention to it. Anyway.
What I was going to do is I was actually going to complain about something locally here that is being called the rain tax.
Oh, yes. Okay. Please.
Have you heard of that at all?
I have heard of that. Yeah, we've had something similar around these parts. Yeah.
Right. Basically, it's something that they started around here fairly recently, in which the justification is Chesapeake Bay cleanup.
Yeah.
The Susquehanna River goes through here. It goes into the Chesapeake Bay, and all sorts of chemicals and pollutants and stuff are swept down. It damages the bay. So they're talking about having to raise money to help protect the bay.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they put what is being known colloquially as a rain tax. What happens is that your sewer bill is being increased based on coverage on your land. If you have a certain amount of land, their argument is that if some of it isn't, whatever amount of it isn't ground, ends up running off and it goes into the system, into the streams, into the river, and down to the Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah.
And so basically you're getting taxed by how much of your property is covered. If you've got a paved driveway rather than a dirt one, you pay more. If you've got a deck that extends out from your house, you pay more. They're using satellite imagery and estimating based on that. And some people's sewer bills are going from like $60 to $300 or $400 based on what's being called the rain tax.
Yeah.
And some aren't that extreme. Now, there was apparently a farm that got some huge bill, and they said, no, the water soaks into the ground and the crops grow. That's how farms work.
What? No, hang on. Roll that back. What? I've never heard that.
But, now, fortunately, where I am, I haven't been hit by it yet, but a lot of people in the area have, a lot of municipalities have. Bear in mind that despite the explanation that it's to help clean up the Chesapeake Bay, I believe it was last August, 2018, we had a point where the river got up really high. We had some heavy rains, the river, there was low-level flooding and stuff.
Yeah.
And somewhere up in New York, around Binghamton, I believe it was, over the course of 3 or 4 days with the flooding, they dumped approximately 35 million gallons of raw sewage directly into the Susquehanna River.
Whew, Jesus.
During the flooding, when the water's getting up into places it shouldn't be, in people's houses and stuff, they're dumping raw sewage into it. They reported to the New York state government, as they're required to do by state law. Nothing requires them to inform Pennsylvania, so Pennsylvania didn't find out about it until weeks later.
Yeah.
as far as I know, their penalty was they had to report it to New York government. That was it. 35 million gallons of raw sewage. That's not a problem. Your
Jesus
driveway
Christ.
is paved. You need to pay more to the sewer authority, which takes
Yeah.
care of this raw sewage by dumping it directly into the damn river.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, whoever has come up with this latest way to just soak the common man for more money because we can't tax millionaires.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the problem with it. Like, I think it's not the general idea of let's raise revenue to help clean up the bay is a good one. But yeah, it's targeted at the wrong people.
Yeah.
It should be targeted at people who can afford to pay it. You know,
And
like
people who are responsible for it, not people
yeah,
who have
and
a paved driveway.
right? People who are ultimately responsible for it. Exactly. Well,
It's like if I have all my rain gutters filter into buckets and we don't let it flow into the river, can I get my bill back down?
you just seal the bucket and put it in the basement. Yeah, I had to buy a new house to keep all the buckets. I'm saving the water.
We'll wait. Eventually, it'll evaporate out, and it'll go back in the air, and we'll be
There
fine.
you go. Yeah, I mean, well, I had a similar thought just yesterday. Actually, we were talking about
Not timely.
yeah, well, because I was talking about the lottery, not about the rain tax. But we were talking about because my wife and I went out to eat, and we were at a convenience store, and there were people there who were playing Keno, and they were like super into this Keno game. Like they sat there like the whole time we were there, like they were sitting there like watching the Keno board, and we got to talking about the lottery afterwards. And I thought, I kind of have a problem with the lottery because, yeah, I mean, it's voluntary. Like people will choose to buy lottery tickets, but most people who buy lottery tickets are poor people or working class
Yeah.
people. And
Yeah, all the ads here say benefits older Pennsylvanians.
yeah, that the money from a lottery goes to fund some government program, which is often like a good program, like something that should be funded. But I thought, why can't we fund it by just taxing rich people? Like, why are we redistributing wealth from poor people to programs that usually benefit other poor people when we could be redistributing wealth from people who have it to spare to fund programs
Well,
to take care of poor people?
because this money usually comes from people who can't afford to lose it.
Yeah.
Which is, I have never worked at the casino nearby. I've never actually gone in, but Mohegan Sun does have a casino nearby where it used to just be a horse racing track, and now they built a huge casino.
Mhm.
And people, I've heard of people who have worked there who quit because they can't stand watching the people destroy themselves, because they don't put any clocks in where there's the gambling, the slot machines or whatever, because they don't want you to know how long you've been there.
Right.
And I don't know if they succeed enough, but they push to be able to distribute free alcohol to impair judgment of the people who are in there.
Jesus
And
Christ.
what has they say, like people said, people will come in on Friday, eyes full of hope, and an hour later they're in tears because their entire paycheck is gone.
Yeah.
And that people talk about how great it is, but I mean, and how much revenue that the casino is raising. It's like, okay, first of all, most of that revenue is going into a big company that's being taken out of the area.
Yeah.
And second, that money is coming from people who can't afford to lose it.
Exactly.
There are much better investments you can make than to spend little Timmy's insulin money on a slot machine.
Yeah, I mean, I have a big problem with any mechanism for funding a government program. Like I have no problem with government programs. I think we should have more, and they should have more money than they have. But I have a big problem with any mechanism for funding a government program that takes the money from poor people, even if it's collected voluntarily through like a lottery or something like that. I don't think that's how it should be. I think if the government needs money to fund a necessary service, they should take the money from the fucking people that have the money to spare. They shouldn't be taking it from poor people.
Yeah, as far as lottery goes, especially instant tickets, I've always said it would be, I don't bother because it would be easier and cheaper, less time consuming, less frustrating if I simply went out in the backyard and set fire to a small pile of $20 bills. Because really, that's how it comes out,
Yeah.
I say something. People say, I made $2,000 on the lottery last year. How much did you spend on lottery tickets? 10 grand. It's like, yeah, you're a clear business genius.
Yeah. So you made 2,000. Okay. It's like if you're counting calories, but you take a French fry off someone else's plate. Well, that doesn't count. You
Yeah.
know. Well,
If you
I,
borrow a cigarette, you're not really smoking.
yeah, it's not
If you
my cigarette.
borrow a cigarette,
It's
yes.
not mine. I still have all of mine. I haven't smoked any cigarettes today. Yeah, it's just like that. And you're right. Like they come up with all of these contrivances because in most political jurisdictions in the United States, politicians are too scared to even propose. Let's just tax rich people because the Republicans, the right wing, has so successfully dominated the political conversation that people are like, fuck it, god damn it, Elizabeth Warren wouldn't even say she was going to raise taxes to pay for Medicare for all. Like for weeks, they would ask her that question. And the answer is yes, god damn it, I'm going to raise taxes on rich people. They're going to help pay for it because they have the fucking money and because they owe it to the rest of us. God damn it, yes, I'm going to raise their fucking taxes. But instead of saying that, she had to come up with all these creative ways to get around it and emphasize like, now you're not going to pay anymore. Your costs are going to go down. But she wouldn't just say, yeah, I'm going to raise taxes on some people.
Well, this country is skewed so far to the right that centrist, even centrist right ideas are seen as far left. It's kind of absurd, but it's where we are.
Ideas that are conservative in other countries.
Yeah, things that are considered things that are like public education at college, not having a privatized college that charges you 20, 30, 40,000 a semester, universal health care. These are things that other countries have, and they're considered centrist ideas at best. Yeah. But we're at a point in America where ideas that are supported by 60, 70, even 80% of the population are being smeared as far left radical ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, if 80% of the country supports something, it's not that radical an idea. Or it has a lot of support. You can't pretend it's not mainstream.
No.
If the vast majority support it.
Well, and it's just like what I've said before about.
Do we have to close Who's Garbage now?
Or let's close.
Yes, because heaven forbid we wouldn't leave that hanging like an open parentheses.
There we go. Now we know who's garbage now. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say. I closed Who's Garbage Now, and now I can't remember. The parentheses has closed, and everything that was contained within it is lost forever.
Okay, well, no big loss, I guess.
It's not.
We have to do this. This isn't exactly gatekeeping. This is just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Oh, boy. So anything else on your mind for our first show in like 3 months?
Not yet, but I'll tell you what, I'm not sure when we're doing it next month, but at some point in one of these shows coming up, I'm going to have a lot to say about the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover.
Okay.
Because that's coming up next month. They just released a teensy-weensy little 15-second trailer for it.
That's mostly black screen and text, probably.
No, actually, there's
I realized that was one of the things that like Star Trek, like when Star Trek: The Next Generation was first airing in the '80s, and they'd have the promos, and it would just be like 30 or 45 seconds of scenes of the next episode. And then as time went on, they got later in that, they got into Deep Space Nine. The next week promos were like 50% space and text and stuff instead, so they didn't have to show you as much of the episode.
It's like, is the episode not done? Are you still working on it?
With classic Star Trek, that was a legitimate question.
That's true. We don't even know what we're showing next week. Sorry. No, they released a really quick teaser trailer for it, and if you pay attention and you don't look away, you can see like a half second of Brandon Routh as Kingdom Come Superman. So I'm just like, yes.
I would aim for the next show to be the first full week of December because I'm actually not working that week, so I have plenty of time. We could do it at any point during that week. Well, probably. We got some flexibility. I don't know exactly what the schedule is, but I'll be home from Thanksgiving by then, and we'll sort it out from there.
Well, yeah, we can do that, and then we can talk about Crisis in the January show because it won't have aired yet. But
sorry to take the wind out of your sails.
Fuck. I'm really excited.
Maybe we can balance out by doing a late December show and
then two shows in the same month.
We did that once before.
We did, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah. We did a special episode on Charlottesville.
We can do whatever.
We did a very special episode.
Today on a very special Pierre the Chef.
Or like in the later seasons when every episode of MacGyver was a special episode.
Oh man, I tell you, the show that was worst about that was Different Strokes. Different Strokes. Eventually, it was like every
On a
week
very
was
special Blossom.
Yeah. Oh, Blossom. Oh, Blossom was one too. They were. It was after a certain point, they were like, let's just do like fucking after school specials. Like we don't even. Let's just stop trying to be funny.
Oh boy. All right. Well, this seems to have run its natural course here. I think we could have blathered more considering that we hadn't done a show in a while, but
that's true.
Schedules were in conflict or falling behind on something else, or I think I had one thing where I was going to be out of town for a weekend and then you had to catch up on something.
Yeah, we've just been busy, okay? 32 people watching. We've just been busy. What do you want from me?
We thank all 2 to the 4th power people who are watching.
We thank you. Ooh, look at you with your fancy math. Ooh, look at me. I can do fractions.
That was exponents.
I can do exponents. Ooh. I went to school for English. I'm lucky I even recognize a math equation when I see it.
The equal sign is usually a tip-off.
I see an equal sign, and I'm like, is that for the Human Rights Campaign? I don't even consider that it's a mathematical thing.
So I assume you're not the one who balances the checkbook then.
I have computers to do that.
You have Toby Benson.
Toby Benson does it. Yeah, you're running a little short again this month, baby. Oh, really? Wow, I thought for sure I was making more than enough. No.
He's doing the books, and all of a sudden you end up with more in it than say. I started with $1,200. I paid 4 bills. I have $1,500. How does that work exactly? You don't want to know. Creative accounting.
What's funny about it is he does it wearing a little visor and a hand-operated 19th century adding machine. He insists.
That going to show up on the desk?
I said
at the agency.
I said, actually, you know what I'm trying to figure out? We haven't seen Toby Benson and Jack's bedroom yet. That's one of the only spaces that we mentioned that we haven't seen yet. And because I need to find a place to put the Toto single that he stole from the guy's office. Because I can't put it in. I don't want to put it in his detective office because it looks the same as the album cover that he already has.
Yeah.
Because he has the Toto 4 album cover on the wall already, and the single to Rosanna is basically the same cover. So I don't want to put it in the same place because it's two of the same thing. So,
maybe give me the background of the Krav Maga dojo.
Yeah, maybe. Or like if we ever show their bedroom, maybe he'll have it in there. But it's one of my favorite.
That's one of those things that's almost it. You can start making references. One of the things that it's funnier if you imply it without showing it.
Yeah. Well, that joke with him taking the single is one of my favorite jokes I think I've ever come up with on Stephen Stuffy, because like I thought about it. It came to me like as I was writing it, like I didn't plan it, and
sometimes the best stuff happens that way.
Yeah,
it's spontaneous.
Well, because I came up with the shit like I knew I wanted him to say something to like talk his way into the office, and I just wrote that. It just sort of I was just like, oh, maybe he'll say this. Maybe they're both Toto fans and he has tickets, whatever. And so he says, hey, I got tickets to the Toto concert. I saw you're a big fan. You have an autographed Rosanna single on your wall in your office, right? And okay, so whatever. And then as I'm writing it, I'm thinking, man, when he comes out, he should have the Toto single. Like that's totally a Toby Benson move.
That was pretty good. Although I liked him more the Halloween special, some of the throwaway lines with McPherson when he's dealing with the being so large. Yeah.
Oh God, I love his running gag about relocating her to different places.
Yeah.
When he's like, to make sure that you don't damage anything of value, you're being relocated to the Florida Panhandle.
Wasn't it West Virginia first?
The first was West Virginia, where he said you destroyed the most affluent neighborhood in West Virginia. They estimate the damage at about $40. And then they give him shit for that, and he's like, "Fuck you, it's a good joke." And then
I love the fact that he passes it off. He just says, "If it's a joke."
Yeah. and then there's the Florida Panhandle one, and Toby Benson and Wilhelmina give him shit for that, and that's when you hear him say, "You are not the boss of me," right before they cut to the next scene. And then he tries to get her to say, and then he says before they leave, he says, if you feel your orbit decaying, try to land on Crawford, Texas." So yeah, I was pleased with how that turned out.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I can understand why you needed some extra time to do the editing on that, because that was a bit above and beyond than normal.
Well, like almost every shot I had to create in, as like from scratch.
Yeah, I'm sure that, like with what regulars, you have your stock shots of them on the sofa and stuff that you can, but you don't have to recreate them every time.
Well, and even as long as they're actually here, like at some place in the apartment, like I take a picture of them and it's done. Like literally that's it. But when they're at, and when Toby Benson is in his office or something, like I have elements of that I can just put together. But yeah, for stuff like Joff's house, like I had to find all of that shit from scratch. For the stuff in space, I had to find all of that stuff. So yeah, and it just
and then it's not just static. You have to slide it across the image to indicate the drifting.
Exactly.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it took a while. It was
worth it. I bet it's a feeling of triumph and accomplishment when you're done.
Oh my God, it's a feeling, and of relief.
Yeah. It's like, why the fuck did I think this was a good idea?
Yeah. So I want to do it next year too. I want to do it as like a regular thing, but I'll have to,
start earlier,
schedule it a little differently, or start earlier. Yeah. Or just accept from the start that, if I have a Monday video that week, I'm just not going to do it. Like I did this time. I'm just not doing a Facepalm 5 this week. Sorry. I need the extra day.
Like I have a character in Sims who's a writer, and all you do is make up the titles of the books. And I had to write a mystery book, and the title of the book was, "Why the hell did I think writing this book would be a good idea?"
I had to come up with a
little meta joke there.
There were book titles in the bookshelf in Joff's house. There was one, my favorite, and they were by people that I mentioned in previous Joff episodes that he's a fan of.
I noticed some of them were real, some of them were fake. I didn't go over with a fine-tooth comb. But...
There were a bunch of Ayn Rand books that were real.
Yeah.
And then before that, there was a book by Ham Saris. That the title is something like "I've thought about it and I'm definitely right." And then there was one by Joe the Nazi, and it's titled "Stop Calling Me a Nazi." And I thought that was funny because it's on the spine. It reads, "Stop Calling Me a Nazi" by Joe the Nazi.
Yeah. I've been having fun with it because I tend to avoid EA games, but The Sims 3, they had the game and all the expansions. Like they had a holiday sale on Steam. They're all like 80% off, so it's like $600 or $700 worth of games and expansions, and I got them all for under $100, and pretty much the entire Sims 3, thing. So I grabbed it like that, and I've played it a bit, and I have fun. The writer, like I said, has you make up the title, you choose the genre, and you choose the title. And that's it. They sit at the computer a bit and they create books and then they get income for it. And I've had fun. I did a whole thing with Physician Watt. It's a Doctor Who thing, going through that.
Physician Watt?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And I went through that, and I basically write out a backstory. And she's also doing fantasy books. It's something that came about organically. I ended up doing a Pet Demon series, just titles, no actual books. But I'm doing fantasy books. And I wrote it's a demon. Let's kill it. We're good guys. We can do that.
Coming up with titles is so much fun.
Yeah. And the next was, how the hell did we end up with a demon as a pet? And from there, I actually write them down because I have so much fun. I don't want to lose them in and it's the pet demon's presence violates local ordinances. The pet demon consumes local children's souls, the scamp. The pet demon in the case of Mrs. Lane's missing apple pie. The pet demon turns the town reservoir into blood. The pet demon gets elected president, does better than Trump. A visit from the pet demon's father is awkward for everyone. The pet demon gets a pet gorgon and hijinks ensue. And I went away to that for a while, and then I came back. It was the pet demon sneezes violently, leveling Detroit. I'm going to put,
Jesus.
and no one notices, but there weren't enough characters. The pet demon accidentally defoliates Canada. The pet demon slaughters white supremacists. Everyone cheers.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah, the
Feel
pet
good.
demon unleashes hell itself in a Waffle House.
Where else, really? Where else would it be?
Pet demon learns to yodel.
Well, good for the pet demon.
The pet demon spreads the word of Ayn Rand. This is
Now
what
he's,
reminded me.
now he's losing me.
The pet demon learns to play bagpipes.
Okay.
Gets a job processing medical insurance claims, and currently writing gets mistaken for Mitch McConnell.
Oh boy.
He does his best.
We had a bit in our most recent late seating podcast where we reviewed Mommy Dearest, and we did a thing where we went back and forth coming up with titles for Mommy Dearest sequels. And I think it was Mommy Dearest 2, The Quickening, Mommy Dearest 3, Season of the Witch, Mommy Dearest 4, we disagreed on.
Quest for Peace?
I wanted Mommy Dearest 4, The Quest for Peace. Jason suggested Mommy Dearest 4, Mommy's Home. And then after that would be the gritty reboot that would just be called Mommy. So
coming up with titles is so much more fun than actually writing the book.
Yeah.
Or the story or the movie.
Well, especially when the title is supposed to be horseshit. Like there's something so freeing about just thinking up silly titles that just have to be funny in their own right, that don't have to suit a story or,
Stop Calling Me a Nazi by Joe the Nazi.
Stop Calling Me a Nazi, yeah. I came up with one when I was in college. I had to take a writing class, and one of our assignments early on was to write like a model submission letter, like as though we were submitting a work to a magazine, and it didn't have to be for something that we had actually written. So I just made up a title. And so the story that I was supposedly submitting was titled The Erotic Adventures of Dick Cheney. And I've always kept that and wanted to use that for something. The Erotic Adventures of Dick Cheney.
Oh, that's something not even Worley would have on his bookshelf.
No, Worley. Well, because Worley would not read erotica because it's too prurient. It's he wouldn't.
Not even Bill O'Reilly's.
Jesus doesn't want that.
All right. Shall we wrap up here?
Yeah, let's bring this proceeding to a close.
Because how do you follow up the Erotic Adventures of Dick Cheney?
How do you?
By shutting down and letting people dwell on it.
Exactly. I just flashed on Captain Picard from the Drumhead, where he says, "Do not continue with this proceeding." Okay. We will not continue with this proceeding. So we'll do one first week of December.
Yeah, because I should be largely open that entire week, so there's a lot more flexibility there.
Okay.
So instead of having to do it on a Sunday, and it's an entire week off, so I'll be so glad to not be at work that I'll need something to fill the time with. You know how it goes.
I'll be bouncing off the walls.
Theoretically, I can get some writing done, although that probably won't happen.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got stuff I need. I recorded a thing for the review of the last season of Doctor Who, and I did it 6 months ago. I still haven't edited and put the damn thing up.
Oh wow!
It would take me 15 minutes, and I never get around to it. I really should do that.
With me, it's exactly the opposite. With me, I'm like, I'm going to take some time off this weekend, and then it's like, I know it's not going to happen. I know I'm always going to be working on something.
Yeah, I like, hey, want to do a Pierre on this Sunday? And you're like, now I got to catch up on other stuff.
Yeah, I got shit to do.
Well, this is just like a lark for me and for you too. But I mean, you're actually making a living off doing videos, so it is important that you maintain some sort of schedule.
That's right.
And not leave stuff sit in the can for 6 months before you release it.
I got to do those Star Trek videos.
They seem to be helping you a lot.
Yeah, they do. I'm doing one. I'm doing one later today. Actually, I wrote it before we started doing this, and then next week is another one. Is a Trek actually, which I still need to finish writing.
It's not actually Trek, actually.
It's no today. The one I'm shooting today for Wednesday is a not actually.
Oh. So you don't need to write anything for that, really.
No, I'm doing
I know.
another. I'm doing another trivia quiz
Ah,
because I did a couple months ago. I did a trivia quiz
yeah.
and people seem to like it. So Wednesday, when the video goes up, is actually John Delancey's birthday. So I'm doing a trivia quiz about Q.
Hmm.
So that'll be fun, hopefully. And then next week is the Trek actually about Star Trek not understanding
gonna,
evolution.
is it going to start with John Delancey played a character named D,
Exactly.
Q, R, or S?
You know what's funny? It's like you can never tell because like with some of the I think that the questions are really easy, and I'm afraid that people will complain that the quiz isn't challenging enough, and that's what I thought about the Picard quiz too. I thought, man, some of these are so easy, and I got so many comments from people who were like, I didn't get any of those right. So I have no way of judging
Yeah.
how hard
Yeah.
the quiz is.
We
Like,
had something like that because where my one relative worked, like when my sister and I were growing up, she would put like a little Star Trek quiz, put it on the board, so people would have a chance to go over and we do 20 some questions. And just classic Star Trek, because I mean, Next Generation was just starting at that point. So it was just classic Star Trek, which was running on the local PBS station at that point. And we thought that we were doing easy stuff. And she came back to us later and reported it was the first time that nobody got a single question right. It's
wow.
like, yikes.
Oh,
Some of
okay.
these were, we were thinking, like, do we do a page of really hard questions? It's like, God, thank goodness we didn't. It's like, those people have lives. They think about things other than Star Trek.
Oh man.
All
Yeah.
right. So we're going to
Okay.
let go now. Thank you for watching. Sorry it's been so long since the last episode. Next one will
Yeah.
be in about 3 weeks. We're not going to go quite as long again, barring unforeseen catastrophe.
Barring unforeseen catastrophes, yeah. Or if we are both killed in the war on Christmas.
Yeah, well, that would be an unforeseen catastrophe.
That would be an unforeseen catastrophe. Yeah.
Trump triggers a war of other sorts and we get killed. Or...
That could happen too. Hey, well, I mean, I mean, we're both too old to be drafted at this point, so
They can change the rules. They do that all the time.
That's a nice sentiment to end on Veterans Day. We're too old to serve.
Wow.
Woohoo!
Wow. Okay. That one was all Steve. I'm washing my hands of this one.
Get out, get out, get out.
Send the angry letters to him.
Send the angry letters to me. Send the angry tweets and comments to me so I can.
And that way you'll get an easy video of mockery of critics.
Yeah, right. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.